The second topic from the unit 1 is petty cash. And for that purpose, we're going to explain what the general cash funds are. Basically, in this part, we are going to explain that the general cash funds is whatever money the company has that it's available within the company, which means money in the company that it's not deposited into the bank and that it's there available for the general cash use of the company. Okay. The petty cash on the other side is the fund the company uses for minor expenses within the same company, but they do not require a check. It's not part of the general cash amounts, and it is also in charge of a custodian. Now, this petty cash fund needs to be safeguarded by a person. You need to appoint a person who is in charge of safekeeping this money, distributing the amount of money amongst the people that require it, and you need to establish certain policies as to how to use it. For example, are you going to allow some money to be lost? Are you going to return to the custodian whatever money is over? Or on the contrary, you're going to set a and specific amount to be as an allowance for amounts of money that are not lost nor earned after the amount of money that it's permitted. There are two types of petty cash: the variable fund petty cash and the fixed fund petty cash. As the words explain, the variable fund petty cash is an amount that changes constantly. As you can see here, it changes constantly. Therefore, you don't necessarily have to keep the same amount. For example, you may know that the third week of the month is the busiest, and therefore, you know that the employees might possibly need extra money for any disruption that any regular week might possibly have, and therefore you give more money on the third week. Okay, you may have a variable fund petty cash. You may also have a fixed fund petty cash, which is you have a specific amount and you only change it if it's necessary after considering the stats, after considering the amounts of money that moved in the previous months, and therefore you consider the money you had before is insufficient or excessive, and therefore you need to change it. Otherwise, it's always the same amount of money. Now, these are the steps to create a petty cash. Step number 1: either the accountants or the treasurer will make a detailed study of the minor expenses in a month. Now, based on this study, a reasonable amount of money will be issued for these funds with a check that will be delivered to the custodian of the fund. This person will be in charge of cashing the check in bills and coins to have handy for small payments. Every time the custodian delivers money for any purchase, he or she handles a petty cash voucher that needs to be signed by the person receiving the money. These vouchers are kept in an auxiliary petty cash book. This is very important. If the custodian is giving money away, the person receiving the money needs to sign a document as a proof that he or she is receiving money. Otherwise, if you go to make a cash count into that fund and the custodian doesn't have all the money, he or she may say, well, I just gave 10,000 colones to somebody to go purchase, but there's no document stating that. So that's why it's important to make the person receiving the money to sign a voucher stating that they have received the money. Number 3, the custodian of the petty cash must always keep an amount equal to the original fund. These amounts may result the combination of bills, coins, and vouchers. For example, if the fund was originated with the amount of 100,000 colones and there have been payments for a total of 50,000, then the fund would look like this. In cash, that person has 50,000 and invoices in the amount of 50,000. Therefore, that person, the custodian, still has the 100. Okay, they still have the 100,000, but 50 in cash and 50 in invoices and vouchers. 4. When the fund is no longer able to cover for the expenses, the custodian will then request a reposition of the petty cash fund. He or she will then deliver the invoices kept in the fund to the accounting department and will continue to register the vouchers in the auxiliary petty cash book. This is very important. Whenever the custodian is requesting a reposition of the money because he or she spent it all or half of it or most of it, the accounting department picks up the invoices and they have to stamp it. They have to visually separate those invoices from the rest. These invoices will then be stamped with the word paid with check number. And in this check number goes the original check, the one used for the opening in this case. This is done to prevent future thefts with these invoices. Then the custodian will request a check for the same amount of money and therefore will have the full amount available again. This is very important. Whenever accountant department is collecting those invoices, they have to visualize them some way, they have to mark them some way so that these invoices don't find their way back into the fund and being over collected again. They can just be collected once. Internal control. The next topic is precisely internal control of a petty cash fund. There needs to be one single custodian of the petty cash fund, only one person in charge of that money. The amount of the fund needs to be fixed and well known. Everybody needs to know how much money there is in total. There should be petty random cash counts, also known as cash audits. The purpose of a petty cash fund is not to cash checks. That's very important. Once the fund is restored to its original state, all invoices will be stamped with the word paid with check number. Okay? That is for internal control of the petty cash fund itself. Now, the amount of every petty cash fund depends on the size of the company as well as its needs. This portion of the text that I have highlighted is very important, and I will copy it here and also copy it later on in the same video. And I'm going to read it like this: a journal entry with the word petty cash will only be performed for increases, decreases, opening, and closing the petty cash fund. This will be more understandable once you reach the journal entries, but stop. Go. It is very important that you understand that whenever you are creating journal entries, you only use the word petty cash if you're opening the petty cash, closing it, increasing it, or decreasing it. Reimbursements do not have the word petty cash in it. I repeat, reimbursements do not have the word petty cash in a journal entry. You will understand this better later on whenever you're making a practice. And then again, this highlighted portion will appear again later on the video. Restrictions apply. There should be a maximum amount to be cashed via petty cash. Otherwise, any person would come requesting for money. For larger amounts, they need to process a check via accounting department. The petty cash account will only be seen on journal entries, again, when it is created, eliminated, increased, or decreased only. There must only be one custodian. This custodian cannot have access to the accounting department, collections, nor the general cash funds. Simple aspect. Whoever is in charge of this petty cash cannot also have access to the journal entries creation. For internal control, the reposition of the fund will be issued with a check under the name of the custodian. Normally, the reimbursements, the reposition checks do not have the same amount of money because rarely a custodian will spend the entire amount given. Probably he or she will have bills and coins left. So the new check will just come with the difference, the amount of money that the company has to reimburse. Once the invoices are collected, the journal entries will be done under the name of each account, whether expenses or others. Now, the ledger and auxiliary ledger is very important because thanks to these, we can analyze the behavior of each account. And also, thanks to this notes, we can analyze if the fund is sufficient or insufficient. Now, when it comes to the cash controls or the cash audits, it is the analysis of transactions and cash during a certain period of time. Its purpose is to test if what has been written down is what is present in cash and invoices. So the idea of the cash audits is to get to the custodian and make an analysis on the amounts of money, bills, coins, invoices, and vouchers that he or she has immediately. They have to be unannounced. You cannot announce a cash audits. They have to be randomized in time, and in other means, it is an audit to prove the total amount is present on the petty cash fund at the time of the evaluation. This total amount can be present in cash or invoices or a combination of both. Now, it is oftentimes common to have shortages and overages. Now, the meaning of this account is used whether you have extra money or you have less money. You use the same account, okay? You use, whenever you have less money, you use this account on the debit. And when you have more money, you use this account on the credit. Same account used in debit and credit whenever you need to say you have less or more money, compared to the total fund that was granted to the petty cash fund, and also compared to the ledger. These differences are generally accounted in account called shortage and overage. Once the amount was registered under this account in the journal, it needs to be returned. And if it's not fixed at the end of a period, it will be recorded as profit and loss. Now let's take a look into the petty cash journal entries. The first example we are going to see, it's when we open and create the petty cash fund, because there are four exceptions, four unique ways in which you are going to use the word petty cash in a journal entry. This is one. Remember those four. Number one, when you open. Number two, when you close. Number three, when you increase the fund. And number four, when you decrease the fund. Open, close, increase, decrease. Because we are going to learn how to do the number one, we are going to use the word petty cash. And let's read. Once the amount has been determined according to the company's needs, the custodian is issued a check under his or her name. Let's assume the company Berylicious decides to open a petty cash fund for 50,000 colones with check number 106 on April 6, 2021. The check belongs to Bank San Jose, account number 906, under the name of Francini Fernandez. She is the custodian of this newly created petty cash fund. She then cashes the check with enough bills and coins to be able to pay this in small amounts. Now, Francini Fernandez is the custodian of this petty cash fund, all right? We're going to create the journal entry with as many details as possible. We are going to use the account called petty cash to open it. Okay, because it is an asset and as such, it goes on the debit. We are going to create the petty cash fund with 50,000 colones. Mhm. Now, this is increasing, and therefore, we are taking the money out of the bank for the same amount. 50,000 colones. We use the partial column accounts to go with the details of the account number, the name of the bank, and such. Okay. Here we are being specific as to which bank we are taking the money from and what is the account number. Okay, we're taking this amount of money from this bank account. In the event in which the person is given several checks from several accounts, you would use as many partial columns as needed. And now it'll be open petty cash fund with check number 106. This will be an example of a journal entry when you open and create the petty cash fund. Now let's take a look on how can we make a reimbursement on a petty cash fund. So imagine that this petty cash has been moving. We gave Francini 50,000 colones and several people have arrived requesting for amounts for different situations that required money. In this example I am providing, Francini gave several money to several people. For example, um, there was a purchase of a safe in order to keep the money locked with a key. Okay, so there is a purchase for 2,800. She also purchased several things either she did or other members of the company did, and in the amount of 5,000 colones, so there are invoices on that amount. They also had to pay the water bill for 4,500. Several people requested money. Several people requested money, and this is dependent on the company. The company may say, sure, go ahead and make cash advancements to the employees, or only to these and these employees, or no cash advancements at all. It depends on the policies that the company provides. In this particular scenario, this company allows cash advancements. So Francine gave money to several employees. These advancements went into the amount of 27,000 colones. Then several payments were made towards mail stamps for 2,500, and there also had to be some vouchers for Uber for employees in the amount of 2,800. So this is what you find. Okay. Once the petty cash fund runs low on cash, the custodian Francini needs to replace the invoices with money again so that she can continue lending money for regular expenses. On April 7th, Francine has already paid the following expenses. This is the amount of money that has already been gone. Okay. Let's take a look into the following part. How do we reimburse that amount of money? When she presented her documents, a petty cash count was performed, and the findings are. Remember what a petty cash count is. A petty cash count is where you go, count the money, and check the papers that are there. Okay? You gave her 50,000 colones. So she's supposed to have 50,000 colones in bills, coins, vouchers, and invoices. Okay? With those four things, she should have 50,000 colones. When you perform the count, you realize that in invoices, she has 44,600, which are previously explained right here with this breakdown that I gave you. I gave you an itemized details of how much she had spent before. As you can see, this is itemized. So you can see all the rubrics that she spent. 44,600. Therefore, in cash, she should have 5,400, which indeed she does. Now, when adding them together, you get 50,000, which means she neither had a profit nor loss. So she became square with the petty cash fund. She is fine with the cash fund. You found 50,000 in total. The journal entry to replace the money from the petty cash fund will not involve using the account petty cash fund. Now remember, I'm copying this again. This is just a copy paste from what I already did at the beginning of the document. A journal entry with the account petty cash will only be performed for increases, decreases, opening and closing the petty cash fund. No other way you will use the word petty cash in the journal entry. All right. Therefore, because we are going to replace the petty cash fund and we cannot use the word petty cash anymore because this is just a reimbursement, it's not an opening, it's not a closing, it's not an increase nor a decrease, it's simply a reimbursement. We are going to do this journal entry like this. General expenses 2,800. Stationery and office supplies expenses 5,000. Water expenses 4,500. Cash advance 27,000. In this particular case, cash advance, if you were given the names of the employees and the amounts of money, you need to use the partial column account. Okay, you need to go with the partial column here and start specifying who you gave the money to. Since this is just an example to teach you how to do it, I don't go much into details in this one. Mail expenses 2,500, transportation expenses 2,800, having a total amount of 44,600. And that is the check you're going to make. You only make the check for 44,600. Why? You're not going to make it for 50 again because remember, she still has some cash. She has 5,400 in cash. You don't have to give her 50 again. This fund, it's only for 50,000. If you give her another check for 50 and she already has 5,400, you would end up with 55,400, which is not the purpose. The purpose is to reach 50,000 again. So you only replace the amount of money that she spent. Francini gave this to everybody, so now you have to give it back to her. Okay. Now, this is the simplest of cases because in this particular case, you do not have any shortages or overages. So, this is the basic example of a reimbursement. You go, you collect all the invoices, you make a check for the amount of those invoices, and that's it. No average, no shortage, and certainly um, nothing is missing. Mhm. And so this is a simple example on how to make a reimbursement. All right. Let's go to the third example. Increase. The increase of the petty cash fund. Remember the four exceptions where you use the word petty cash? Okay, this is one. It was open, close, increase, decrease. Okay, now we're going to have an increase. Therefore, we use the word petty cash in my journal entry. When the amount on the fund is not enough to cover for the regular expenses, then it needs to be increased. Therefore, a new check where the extra amount is issued under the name of the custodian needs to be done. Okay. This is how a regular journal entry of an increase would look like. We are going to increase this petty cash fund in the amount of 15,000. Then we use the word petty cash again because we're going to increase it on the debit column against bank. It is opposed to bank because we're going to take the money from the bank. And on the detail, we are going to write as many details as possible. Then again, this is just an example. Okay, just an example. Therefore, I am being very short on details. However, you have to make as many details as possible once you start doing the practice. This concludes the first video about petty cash, and in future videos, we will explain the rest of the details regarding how to make a journal entry for a decrease, along with other details important for this topic. Thank you.